Your business is officially banned from operating in this community. Those were the exact words Margaret Thompson, the HOA president, said as she slapped a cease and desist letter on our bakery counter. What she didn't know was that I wasn't just another business owner she could bully. I secretly owned the entire shopping complex where her precious HOA offices were located. The look on her face when I handed her the eviction notice is something I'll never forget. Now I'm going to tell you how it all went down and what happens when HOA tyrants mess with the wrong family. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe if you want more HOA revenge stories. Running a small bakery had been my dream for years. After 2 decades in corporate finance, saving every penny while watching my wife Claire delight our neighborhood with her homemade pastries, I finally opened Sweet Memories in the Oak Ridge shopping plaza. The name honored Claire, whose recipes became the heart and soul of our business after cancer took her from us 3 years ago. Our 16-year-old daughter Emma had inherited her mother's talent for baking, making us the perfect father-daughter team. The bakery wasn't just a business. It was our healing, our connection, our future. For the first 6 months, everything was perfect. Our little corner shop with its blue awning and hand-painted window signs quickly became a neighborhood favorite. Locals lined up every morning for Emma's cinnamon rolls and my sourdough bread. Business was booming, and for the first time since losing Claire, I felt hopeful again. What nobody knew, what I'd kept carefully hidden, was that I owned the entire shopping plaza through my investment company, Miller Holdings LLC. 10 years of smart investments had paid off, but I never wanted special treatment. I wanted to earn my success like everyone else. That's when Margaret Thompson entered our lives like a perfectly coiffed hurricane. She'd recently been elected president of the Oak Ridge Estates HOA, the upscale neighborhood directly behind our shopping plaza. I still remember how she walked in, designer handbag swinging from her arm, her sharp eyes scanning our bakery like a health inspector looking for violations. "You're new here," she said, voice dripping with fake sweetness. "That blue awning isn't exactly in line with our neighborhood aesthetic." I explained we weren't part of her HOA's jurisdiction, but she just smiled that predatory smile. "Nevertheless, your business affects our property values. We have guidelines for a reason." She left without buying anything, but that was just the beginning of our nightmare. Little did she know, she had just declared war on the one person who could take everything from her. And when she put her hands on my daughter, that's when I decided it was time to show my cards. Within a week, we received our first community suggestion letter on official HOA letterhead. Our signage was too colorful. Our outdoor seating obstructed visual harmony. Each letter ended with the same thinly veiled threat. Businesses that maintain good relationships with Oak Ridge Estates residents naturally enjoy better patronage. I did my best to ignore them. The shopping plaza management had approved all our designs, and our lease was in perfect standing. But Margaret wasn't used to being ignored. Next came complaints about excessive parking when our morning rush supposedly inconvenienced HOA residents. Then noise pollution from our early morning deliveries, each complaint more ridiculous than the last. "Dad, should we be worried?" Emma asked one morning, sorting through another stack of HOA letters. I squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "No, honey, they can't touch us." I didn't tell her why I was so confident. I never wanted her to see me as anything other than her baker dad, not some property tycoon. The harassment escalated when Margaret recruited her community watch volunteers. Suddenly we had middle-aged men and women in matching polo shirts, photographing our customers, noting license plates and timing how long people stayed. Mrs. Chen, who owned the florist shop next door, told me they were doing the same to her after she refused to remove her traditional Chinese lanterns. They say my decorations are ethnically inconsistent with neighborhood standards, she confided, her voice quivering with indignation. My family has been in this country for 3 generations. I was furious, but still reluctant to reveal my ownership. Document everything, I advised her. If enough businesses complain, the plaza management will have to step in. Of course, I was the plaza management, but I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. Margaret's next move was distributing flyers throughout Oak Ridge Estates, warning residents about non-compliant businesses that were lowering community standards and property values. Our bakery was featured prominently with a particularly unflattering photo taken during trash collection day. The impact was immediate. Our daily sales dropped by nearly 20%. "This is harassment," my friend Michael said when he stopped by for coffee. As a local attorney, he'd been advising me informally. "You have grounds for a defamation suit." I shook my head. "Not yet. I'm building a case." In reality, I was still hoping Margaret would get bored and move on to another target. I underestimated her determination. The following month, Margaret organized an HOA community standards fair in the shopping plaza parking lot, without proper permits. They set up directly in front of our bakery, blocking customer access with tables and displays, showing approved business designs, all beige, all boring, all completely soulless. When I confronted her, Margaret's smile never reached her eyes. "We have every right to educate our community about proper standards," she said, loud enough for passing shoppers to hear. "You need permits for events like this," I countered, struggling to keep my voice level. "Oh?" She raised one perfectly penciled eyebrow. "I wasn't aware. Perhaps if your garish bakery signage didn't distract so much, I would have noticed the permit requirements." Her companions laughed on cue. That night I finally told Emma about my ownership of the plaza. "Why haven't you stopped her?" she asked, eyes wide with surprise. "Because I don't want special treatment," I explained. "Your mother always taught us to earn our success honestly." Emma's expression softened at the mention of her mother. "Mom would have stood up to bullies," she said quietly. She was right, of course. Claire had never backed down from a fight. Not with her business competitors, not with her cancer diagnosis. But she'd always fought fairly. I needed to find a balance between using my power and abusing it. The next escalation came when Margaret somehow obtained my cell phone number. The call started at 6 a.m., courtesy reminders about everything from the placement of our delivery van to the height of our potted plants. I blocked her number, so she began using different board members' phones. Our loyal customers tried to help. They organized a Support Sweet Memories Day that brought in record business. Margaret responded by stationing health concern monitors outside our door, clipboard in hand, making a show of writing down violations. "They're intimidating my customers," I told Michael, showing him the surveillance footage. "This has to stop." "Legally, they're in a gray area," he admitted. "They're in a public space. But combined with everything else, it shows a pattern of targeted harassment." I added the footage to my growing file. By now I had documented over 30 separate incidents, from the letters to the fake health concerns to the parking lot stakes. Still, I hesitated to use my nuclear option. Once I revealed my ownership, there would be no going back. The Friday morning rush was always our busiest time. Emma arrived at 4 a.m. to start the day's baking, while I handled deliveries to our local restaurant accounts. When I returned at 6:30, I found the bakery surrounded by official-looking vehicles. "Health department," Emma explained, her face pale with worry. "Someone filed an anonymous complaint about rodent infestations." My stomach dropped. This was no coincidence. The inspector, a tired-looking man named Dennis, was thorough but fair. "I've been doing this job 20 years, he told me quietly as he checked our storage areas. "Your kitchen is immaculate, but I have to complete the inspection once a complaint is filed." By the time he left, issuing us a perfect score, the damage was done. Customers had seen the health department van. Whispers spread through the neighborhood next door app like wildfire. Possible health code violations at Sweet Memories. Bakery inspection in progress. Margaret didn't even try to hide her satisfaction when she came in later that day. Such a shame about the inspection, she said loudly as several customers glanced up nervously. You just never know about food safety these days. I wanted to confront her then and there, but Emma squeezed my arm in warning. Not here, Dad, she whispered. Not like this. That weekend, someone taped printouts of fake health violation notices to our window overnight. Though we removed them immediately, several early customers saw them. No matter how many times we explained they were fake, the seeds of doubt had been planted. We need to fight back, Emma insisted Sunday night as we reviewed our lowest weekend sales since opening. Mom wouldn't let them win. She was right again. Claire had always said that bullies counted on people being too polite to stand up for themselves. I made a decision then. I would consult with my property management company and lawyer about formal action. But Margaret acted before I could. Tuesday morning started like any other. I had scheduled an emergency flour delivery. Our supplier had mixed up dates and we were dangerously low. Emma, responsible beyond her 16 years, assured me she could handle the morning rush alone while I picked up our supply. I've done it before, Dad, she reminded me. It's only 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes would change everything. When I returned, arms loaded with flour sacks, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The normally bustling bakery was eerily quiet. 3 customers stood awkwardly by the counter, looking uncomfortable. And there, behind the register, was Emma, sitting on the floor, tears streaming down her face, her apron dusty with flour handprints. I dropped everything and rushed to her side. Emma, what happened? Mrs. Chen appeared from nowhere, her normally gentle face flushed with anger. That horrible HOA woman, she exclaimed. She pushed Emma. I saw everything. Between sobs, Emma explained. Margaret had arrived with 2 other HOA board members, demanding to inspect our kitchen for violations. When Emma correctly refused, health regulations didn't allow unauthorized personnel in food preparation areas, Margaret had tried to force her way past. She said I was being disrespectful, Emma whispered, showing me the bruise forming on her arm where she'd hit the baking rack after being shoved. She said I'd regret not cooperating with the HOA. Something inside me shifted in that moment. This wasn't about business anymore. Margaret had crossed an unforgivable line by putting her hands on my child. The careful restraint I'd maintained for months evaporated instantly. Did anyone else see this happen? I asked, my voice deadly calm. Emma nodded. Mrs. Chen was waiting for her usual order. So were Mr. Grayson and the Sullivan twins. Mrs. Chen stepped forward. I will be witness. What she did, it was assault on a minor. I already called police to make report. I helped Emma to her feet and hugged her tightly. It's going to be okay, I promised. Margaret Thompson just made the biggest mistake of her life. As I called our assistant manager to cover the rest of the day, I knew exactly what I had to do. The time for patience was over. Margaret needed to learn precisely who she'd been harassing and whose property her precious HOA was occupying. The HOA's monthly meeting was scheduled for tomorrow. Perfect timing for what I had in mind. Michael, I said when my attorney friend answered his phone, I need your help with something. It's time to show my cards. That night, as Emma slept, I sat at our kitchen table reviewing property deeds, lease agreements, and the extensive documentation of Margaret's harassment campaign. By morning, everything was in place for the confrontation that had been 6 months in the making. Margaret Thompson had no idea what was coming, but she was about to learn an expensive lesson. Sometimes the quiet baker with flour-dusted hands is the one person in town you should never, ever cross. The morning after Margaret assaulted Emma, I sat in my lawyer Patricia's office, a leather portfolio on my lap, containing everything we needed. Unlike Michael, who'd been advising me informally, Patricia specialized in commercial property law and had managed several of my real estate acquisitions. "Are you absolutely certain you want to do this?" Patricia asked, reviewing the documents I'd brought. "Once you reveal your ownership, your relationship with every tenant in that plaza will change." I touched the photo of Emma's bruised arm. "I'm certain." Margaret crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. Patricia nodded, understanding in her eyes. She'd known Claire, had seen what her death did to Emma and me. "The eviction notice is ready. So is the restraining order application. But James, there might be less nuclear options." I gave her 6 months of less nuclear options, I said quietly. 6 months of documented harassment while I tried to handle this like a normal tenant would. She responded by assaulting my 16-year-old daughter. Patricia sighed. "Fair enough. I've reviewed the witness statements from Mrs. Chen and the others. They're solid. The police report helps too, though I'm not surprised Margaret hasn't been arrested." "Her husband plays golf with half the police department," I said bitterly. "But that won't help her today." We spent the next hour finalizing our strategy. The HOA meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m., prime time for what I had planned. Patricia would accompany me as my legal counsel, presenting both the eviction notice for the HOA offices and the personal restraining order against Margaret. "Remember," Patricia cautioned as we wrapped up, "stay calm no matter what she says or does. We want her to lose control, not you." I nodded, though staying calm was the furthest thing from my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma on the HOA floor, tears streaming down her face. I heard Margaret's voice. "You'll regret not cooperating with the HOA." By 2 p.m. I was back at the bakery, changing from my flour-dusted apron into a crisp navy suit I rarely wore anymore. Emma watched from the doorway of our small office. "Are you sure about this, Dad?" she asked, her voice small. I straightened my tie. "Absolutely sure. No one puts their hands on you and gets away with it." Emma stepped forward, adjusting my tie with the same fussy precision her mother once had. "Mum would be proud of you," she said, "for waiting as long as you did, and for standing up now when it matters." My throat tightened. "She'd be prouder of you. You stood your ground yesterday, just like she would have." From the front of the bakery, we could see HOA board members arriving one by one. Margaret's silver luxury SUV pulling into her unofficial, reserved parking spot. Emma gave me a fierce hug before I left. "Make her pay," she whispered, so unlike her usual gentle self that I almost smiled despite everything. Patricia met me outside the HOA office, elegant and imposing in her charcoal suit. "Ready?" I took a deep breath, thinking of Claire, of Emma, of all the small business owners Margaret had bullied over the years. "Ready." The HOA meeting room was beige and soulless, just like Margaret's vision for the entire shopping plaza. 12 board members sat around a large rectangular table with Margaret at the head, a gavel actually sitting before her like she was presiding over some sort of court. The room fell silent as heads turned toward us. Margaret's perfectly penciled eyebrows rose in surprise, then lowered in annoyance, her lips thinned to a bloodless line. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "this is a private HOA meeting. You're not a resident, and you're certainly not welcome here." Patricia stepped forward before I could respond. "Actually, Mrs. Thompson, as the property owner, Mr. Miller has every right to be here." Margaret's face registered confusion, then disbelief. "Property owner, what are you talking about?" I met her gaze steadily. "What my attorney means, Margaret, is that I own this entire shopping plaza. Your HOA has been renting office space from my property management company, which I also own for the past 7 years. The silence in the room was absolute. Margaret's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. An older board member with a shock of white hair broke the silence. "James Miller, you're the owner of Miller Holdings LLC?" I nodded. That's impossible," Margaret sputtered, finding her voice at last. "Why would you be running a bakery if you own all this?" "Because baking makes me happy," I said simply. "My late wife taught me that following your passion is more important than flaunting your success." I placed my portfolio on the table and removed the property deed. "But that's not why I'm here today. Patricia, would you please explain?" Patricia placed an official document before Margaret. "This is a notice of lease violation and eviction proceedings against Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. The storm that had been building for 6 months was about to break, and Margaret Thompson was standing directly in its path." To go for. The room erupted into confused murmurs. Margaret's face flushed an alarming shade of red as she snatched up the eviction notice. "This is absurd," she sputtered, scanning the document. "We have a binding lease with Oak Ridge Commercial Properties. You can't evict us." "I'm afraid they can," Patricia continued with professional calm. "As the property owner, Miller Holdings LLC has documented multiple violations of lease terms, including harassment of other tenants, unauthorized surveillance of shopping center patrons, and most recently, physical assault against a minor on these premises." The board members exchanged confused glances. The white-haired gentleman leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. "Physical assault? What is she talking about, Margaret?" Before Margaret could respond, I opened my portfolio again and removed a folder containing witness statements and photographs. "Yesterday at approximately 6:15 a.m., Mrs. Thompson entered Sweet Memories Bakery with 2 other HOA representatives," I explained, my voice steady despite the anger simmering just beneath the surface. "When my 16-year-old daughter refused to allow unauthorized access to our kitchen, as health regulations require, Mrs. Thompson physically shoved her, causing her to fall against a baking rack." I placed the photo of Emma's bruised arm on the table, along with the police report Mrs. Chen had insisted on filing. "We have 4 witnesses who saw the entire incident, including 3 customers and a neighboring business owner. We also have security camera footage." A woman with silver-streaked hair gasped audibly. "Margaret, you didn't tell us there was a physical altercation with a child." Margaret's composure cracked completely. "She was being difficult," she snapped, gesturing wildly. "These people have been ignoring our community standards for months. Their garish signs and constant deliveries are all within their lease rights," Patricia interrupted smoothly. "Unlike your unauthorized community patrols that have been photographing customers without consent, a violation of privacy laws and your lease terms." I placed another thick folder on the table. "This contains documented evidence of 6 months of targeted harassment against our business, fake health violation reports, defamatory social media posts from your official HOA accounts, parking violations that your own members committed while monitoring our business." The board members were now staring at Margaret with growing horror. A middle-aged man in a polo shirt flipped through the documentation, his expression darkening with each page. "These letters," he said, holding up one of the HOA's threatening notices, "were sent without board approval. We never voted on any action against the bakery." Margaret waved her hand dismissively. "I don't need board approval for routine community standards enforcement. Assaulting a 16-year-old girl is hardly routine enforcement," interrupted a younger woman seated near the end of the table. "Margaret, this is completely unacceptable. The eviction notice gives you 30 days to vacate these premises," Patricia continued, unruffled by the tension in the room. "Additionally, we're filing a restraining order against Ms. Thompson. preventing her from entering any portion of the shopping plaza, including Sweet Memories Bakery. Margaret jumped to her feet, knocking her chair backward with a crash. "You can't do this. Do you know who I am in this community? My husband plays golf with Judge Harrison every Sunday." "Your social connections won't matter in this case," Patricia replied. "The evidence is overwhelming, and frankly, Mrs. Thompson assaulting a minor is indefensible regardless of who your husband golfs with." Margaret's eyes narrowed to slits. "This is a setup," she hissed, jabbing a finger in my direction. "You've been planning this from the beginning, haven't you? Opened that pathetic little bakery just to spy on us, pretending to be some sad widower. With your brat daughter." The white-haired gentleman slammed his hand on the table. "That's enough, Margaret." But Margaret was beyond reason now. "Give me those documents," she snarled, lunging across the table. "This is all lies." As she grabbed for the eviction notice, her arm struck mine with deliberate force, hard enough to leave a mark. The whole room froze. Margaret had just physically assaulted a second person, this time in front of 11 witnesses. "That's assault," Patricia said quietly, already making notes. "Your second in 24 hours. Margaret seemed to realize her mistake too late, her eyes widening as she looked around at the shocked faces of her fellow board members. He was in my way," she stammered, but the damage was done. The white-haired man stood slowly. "My name is Robert Chambers, Mr. Miller. I'm the vice president of this association." He turned to Margaret, his expression stern. "Margaret, that's enough. I'm calling an emergency executive session. Please leave the room. Now." "You can't dismiss me from my own meeting," Margaret shrieked, her careful facade completely shattered now. "I'm the president." "Not for much longer," Robert replied grimly. "Article 7, Section 3 of our bylaws allows for emergency removal of officers who act against the interests of the association. I believe assaulting a minor and bringing an eviction notice upon our offices qualifies." 2 other board members stood in support of Robert. Margaret looked around wildly, searching for allies, but found none. Even the 2 members who had accompanied her to my bakery were staring at the table, unwilling to meet her eyes. "Fine," she spat, gathering her designer purse with trembling hands. "Have your little coup. This isn't over." She shot me a venomous look. "You'll regret this, Miller. Nobody makes a fool of me." "Actually," I replied calmly, "you've done an excellent job of that yourself." Margaret stormed out, the door slamming behind her with enough force to rattle the cheap landscape paintings on the wall. In her absence, the atmosphere in the room changed completely. Robert turned to me with a sigh. "Mr. Miller, on behalf of the board, I want to apologize for this situation. Clearly, there have been serious lapses in judgment and protocol." He gestured to the documentation spread across the table. "May I ask how long you've owned the shopping plaza?" 10 years, I replied. "I purchased it as an investment property through Miller Holdings. The bakery is a more recent venture. And you never mentioned your ownership because I wanted to be treated like any other tenant," I explained. "My wife always believed in earning your place in a community, not buying it. When she died, opening the bakery using her recipes became a way to honor her memory. Emma and I never wanted special treatment." Robert nodded thoughtfully. A principle Margaret clearly wouldn't understand. He glanced at Patricia. "Regarding this eviction notice, is there any room for negotiation?" Patricia looked to me, and I gave a slight nod. "My client might be open to discussion under certain conditions." For the next hour, Robert, Patricia, and I negotiated while the rest of the board listened. The HOA would immediately remove Margaret from her position. They would issue a public apology to Emma and our business, and they would implement new guidelines to prevent similar abuses of power. "We've been growing concerned about Margaret's leadership for some time," Robert admitted. "She was elected on a platform of community standards, but her methods have become increasingly aggressive. Several homeowners have complained about her tactics, but no one wanted to challenge her directly. Because she intimidated them, I suggested. Precisely, said the silver-haired woman who introduced herself as Eleanor, the board treasurer. My Chinese New Year lanterns were too ethnic, according to Margaret. When I refused to remove them, I started receiving daily violation notices for everything from my mailbox height to the shade of my mulch. One by one, board members shared similar stories. Margaret had created a climate of fear, using HOA regulations as weapons against anyone who opposed her. Even board members weren't immune, finding themselves assigned to undesirable committees or excluded from communications if they questioned her decisions. The question remains, Robert said finally. What do we do about the eviction? I considered, for a moment. Despite everything, evicting the HOA offices would cause disruption to more than just Margaret. Many innocent homeowners would be affected. I'm willing to offer a new lease, I said, with very specific terms about HOA conduct toward plaza businesses. No more community patrols, no photographing customers, no distributing flyers about non-compliant businesses. Robert extended his hand. That's more than fair, Mr. Miller. I can assure you the new board leadership will maintain a respectful relationship with all plaza businesses. As we shook hands, Eleanor spoke up. What about Margaret? The restraining order will prevent her from accessing HOA offices, but she still lives in the community. That's up to your governance procedures, Patricia explained. The restraining order only prevents her from entering the shopping plaza. How you handle her position within the HOA is your decision. Robert's expression hardened. After what we've learned today, I believe we have grounds for removing her not just from the presidency but from the board entirely. Article 11 of our covenant specifically prohibits actions that create legal liability for the association, like assaulting minors. With the immediate crisis addressed, Patricia and I prepared to leave. As I gathered my documents, Robert approached. Me privately, your daughter, he said quietly. Is she all right? The simple human concern in his voice caught me off guard. After months of battling Margaret's cold hostility, the genuine warmth was almost startling. She's shaken, I admitted. But Emma's stronger than she looks, like her mother. Robert nodded. My late wife had cancer too, he said, surprising me. Pancreatic. It's why I understand your bakery isn't just a business. Some things are about keeping memories alive. I studied him with new appreciation. How did you know about my wife's cancer? Small towns, he said with a sad smile. Claire Miller was beloved in this community long before Margaret Thompson arrived. Her charity bake sales for the Children's Hospital were legendary. For the first time that day, I felt the tight knot of anger in my chest begin to loosen. Thank you for that, I said quietly. As Patricia and I walked back toward the bakery, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the shopping plaza, my shopping plaza. I had never particularly wanted to be a landlord. The properties were just good investments, managed remotely while I focused on building a life with Claire and Emma. Now, I wondered if perhaps I'd been too hands-off, allowing someone like Margaret to terrorize tenants unchecked. That went better than expected, Patricia remarked. Are you satisfied with the outcome? I thought about Emma, about the bruise on her arm, about 6 months of harassment and fear. Justice isn't about revenge, I said finally. Claire always said that. It's about restoring balance. I think we did that today. Emma was waiting by the bakery window, her face lighting up when she saw us approaching. As I walked toward her, I realized this confrontation had never really been about property rights or lease violations. It had been about protecting what Claire had left us, not just recipes and memories, but the courage to stand up for ourselves and for each other. Margaret Thompson had picked the wrong family to bully. In trying to destroy our bakery, she had instead ended her own reign of terror. As I reached the bakery door, I caught a glimpse of her silver SUV speeding out of the parking lot, and I knew that one chapter of our story was ending, and perhaps a better one was about to begin. News travels fast in small communities. By closing time that day, our bakery was packed with customers, many expressing support and outrage at how we'd been treated. Mrs. Chen brought a beautiful arrangement of flowers from her shop next door. "You stood up not just for your daughter," she told me, "but for all of us." Margaret threatened to report my shop for excessive fragrance emissions last month when I refused to remove my Chinese New Year decorations. Across the shopping plaza, a transformation began almost immediately. The HOA newsletter, usually filled with violation notices and warnings, contained a front-page apology to our bakery and the community. Robert, now the interim president, personally delivered a copy to every business in the plaza, along with his personal cell number. "No more anonymous complaints," he promised. "If there are legitimate concerns, we'll address them face-to-face, respectfully." Emma's bruise healed, but the experience changed both of us. We decided to use the situation for good, establishing a small business alliance for the shopping plaza. Together, we created guidelines for how businesses and the HOA could work collaboratively rather than adversarially. Robert enthusiastically endorsed the initiative, attending our first meeting with several supportive board members. The HOA continued to rent their office space, under new leadership and a much more detailed lease agreement. Margaret was not only removed as president, but voted off the board entirely after an emergency community meeting where several residents shared their own stories of intimidation and harassment. 3 months later, I heard she'd moved to a different neighborhood. Across town, rumor had it she was already campaigning for a position on their HOA board. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. As for sweet memories, business has never been better. The blue awning still brightens our storefront, and our hand-painted signs still welcome customers with the same warmth Claire always showed to everyone she met. Last week, Emma put up a small sign next to our register. It features her mother's favorite saying, "In a world where you can be anything, be kind." Margaret never understood that. Now she never will. I still don't tell most people I own the plaza. Some things are better kept quiet, but I sleep better knowing that our little bakery is safe, my daughter is happy, and sometimes, just sometimes, justice tastes as sweet as our apple pie. If there's one thing I've learned from this whole ordeal, it's that standing up to bullies isn't about matching their aggression. It's about waiting for the right moment to show your true strength. Margaret thought she was untouchable because of her position and connections. She never imagined the quiet baker with flour-dusted hands could be the one person in town with the power to end her reign. The sweetest revenge isn't served cold. Sometimes, it's served with freshly baked cinnamon rolls and the knowledge that kindness ultimately wins over cruelty. If you've dealt with HOA bullies, share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about standing up to power-hungry HOAs.